What's up, folks? Matty Wills tapped back in for another one of our weekly episodes. We're now in season 2, actually, which is kind of crazy, but another episode of our Wellbeing Wednesday with Matty Wills, of course, which is brought to you by MetroHealth. And this week, we'll be talking to the one and only Dr. Cheryl Wills. She's the Vice Chair for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Chief of Child Psychiatry at MetroHealth. So first and foremost, how you doing, Dr. Wills?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for taking some time out of your we just assume that you guys' days are extremely busy because they usually are. So we really appreciate y'all taking a few minutes out to wrap with us and just get some really vital information to all of our listeners. We've been getting really good feedback for these episodes, and I just want to keep the momentum going. So again, thank you for checking in with us. And this week we'll be talking about how mental health can affect heart health. And Dr. Wills, I know I just said what your title was, but why don't you just spend a few moments and let the listeners and viewers know, exactly what your role is with Metro, what your passions are about your job and things of that nature.
Well, I've been at MetroHealth for about a year, and I treat adults and children under age 65 with a variety of mental health symptoms, including those who are involved in the legal system, as well as those who are professionals and everything between, including MetroHealth employees. And it's a privilege to serve. And my goal is to help them become a better version of themselves by giving them the tools and resources that are conducive to that.
Perfect. And, just as a gentle reminder, and I'm sure I'll say this again before we get done, but anybody watching this, we know how social media works. It's always there. So if you know somebody that could use this information, we highly encourage you to pass the video on, send them the link, tag them in the comments, whatever you got to do to get their attention, because, it's the internet and we can amplify this as much as we want. And this is a very important conversations that we have. So whoever you know in your circle that needs to hear this, we encourage that you show it to them. But we can just get started with question number 1 as we relate mental health to heart wellness. And Dr. Wills, what are some signs that you or your loved one is struggling with depression or a mental health disorder?
Okay, first of all, we all have symptoms related to depression at one time or another. Sleep problems, irritability, depressed mood, anger, sadness, lack of motivation, hard to let go of stuff, tired, concentration issues, appetite, and sometimes a subgroup of people start to think, why am I here? It wouldn't be so bad if I didn't wake up, which is a more extreme circumstances, or if you're hearing voices or seeing visions. Except for the extremes, we all have these symptoms at one time or another. But when you have a certain number of these symptoms and it causes impairment, that's when it crosses over to a mental illness. If it affects you in your relationships, if it affects you in your employment, it affects your ability to care for your health or your children, etc. That's when it crosses over to a mental illness. So the symptoms are there, but to become a mental illness, it needs to cross over to causing you some functional impairment.
Got you. And in my many conversations with your colleagues, I've learned that, while Wellbeing Wednesday and mental health and all of that is usually of the mind, those things can, move over to other parts of your body and start affecting other parts of your body as well. So, which leads us right into question number 2, which is, can you explain how heart health and mental health are interrelated?
Well, first of all, we all need to focus on our physical health. We definitely need to have our checkups, make sure everything is in tune, and make sure we're following recommendations of healthcare providers, because that can lead to other problems. Now, in terms of mental health, that's very important too. And contrary to popular belief, your primary care physicians do more mental health work than psychiatrists, simply because they see more patients. A, B, most mental illness is not at the severity that it absolutely has to be treated by a psychiatrist. And C, there are just so few psychiatrists. But when you have that impairment, if you're feeling depressed, let's say, you don't want to get up, you don't want to take your medication, or you're not being cognizant of the recommendations about diet or exercise or other functions of self-care, then that can impair your health and have an effect on your health. Also, there's studies that show that if you've had a heart attack and you are depressed, your outcomes, your survival rates, and the quality of your life thereafter is likely to be less than it would otherwise. So when you lack the motivation, which can be a symptom of depression, I can't get out of bed, why bother, and why bother to eat the proper diet? I'll just eat junk food because it makes me feel better at the moment. You're not concentrating, you're not exercising. Those things can affect your heart and your quality of life. Also, if you, again, the exercise is related to heart health, your sense of well-being, your interactions with others, because when you're impaired by depression, it can affect how you relate to others and how you manage stress. Well, we know the connections between stress and heart health. It's easier to go to the corner store or the fast food place to get food that's not healthy for you, rather than taking the bus or driving or walking or waiting till you're that area to get enough healthier foods to bring home. And then you also don't feel like cooking in some cases because you're just not motivated. So all of these little things have an additive effect on your heart health and your physical health.
Yeah, everything's interconnected. And the thing that you said that hit home to me when you first started talking about, in the previous question about depression, is that everybody experiences some form or effect of depression at some point. You just got to be mindful about, whether it's one of the extremes, and then how many of the extremes is it, which takes us into question number 3. If you or someone is experiencing signs of depression, then what should you do?
I think the first step would be to talk with your primary care physician. Again, they are familiar with depression, they're familiar with anxiety and other symptoms, and they have resources because they treat more patients than we do. They can help you understand how this is impacting the rest of your health, make recommendations for treatment, and if they're not able to provide that, there are other interventions and resources. For example, at MetroHealth, I work at the Broadway offices, and primary care and pediatrics, we have psychologists who are embedded in the department. So you don't have to come over to psychiatry to talk to someone. They can arrange it there. And that's where medicine is moving, a one-stop shop. And that's what we're hoping to build on, because it's hard. You have work, you have childcare, you have other responsibilities. And who wants to go to appointment after appointment after appointment if you can walk right across the hall and talk with someone and get more input? Now, if that person requires more serious or more concentrated treatment than can be provided in primary care, of course, they get referred. But when that person is referred to me, I have a certain amount of information which allows me to focus my assessment and be more efficient about it. But always check in with your primary care providers. The thing that mental illness, in terms of that impairment, causes or contributes to is a lack of self-preservation. So you're not going to do what's in your best interest to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And we want that to shift the other way, because when it affects you, it affects every system that you interface with, your family system, your educational system, your worship system. For example, I'll explain to people, and some people say, well, I don't want to take medicine. I say, if you go to church and you have 2 ushers, number 1 says, come in here, you can't sit there, don't talk, bathrooms there, but you can only go during this session, and you better not, make sure you put something in an offering basket. And that person who's treated for depression, praise the Lord, welcome, how are you doing? It's so glad to have you here. Is there anything we can do to make you feel comfortable? We have other programs for your children. We are so happy to have you. Which one are you going to choose?
I'm choosing one that's in a better mood, at least in my personal opinion.
Right. And so that one, this first one, had impairment due to depression. Right. The second one is feeling better because they're not depressed and is able to share that joy with you and how they engage with you.
Dr. Wills, I'm sure you've helped people realize just in these few minutes that they may be, in fact, experiencing some symptoms of depression that they might not have even acknowledged. Because, as a father and as a husband, I know how it is to where you just get up and you go to work every day, all day. And sometimes you got to look up and say, hey, I need to go to the gym, or I need to go on this run or something, just to kind of get your body moving, because it does improve my overall spirit, at least in my opinion. So I definitely relate to a lot of those things that you were saying. So obviously we want to stay connected with our primary healthcare physician, but for the person who maybe doesn't have one, obviously we encourage them to get one. But if they don't have one, they can't see them right away. What are some things that they can get doing to kind of reverse those symptoms of depression in the meantime?
I think it's becoming educated and focusing on self-care. So yes, you want the appointments, you want the guidance, you want the consultation. Sometimes you can't see your doctor or your nurse practitioner, your physician's assistant, you can reach out to the nurse. But also being cognizant of what you're doing, being aware of the diet that you're using. When you're not in a good mood or you're ready to explode, take a time out. Just go out and chill out, relax, and then come back to it. And very few things are urgent that they have to be done that second. So again, when you have that impairment, you don't want to perpetuate that or have that permeate the lives of others, especially children. As a child psychiatrist, that's particularly of importance to me because contrary to popular belief, children pick up on signals when their parents or caretakers are not functioning or not on their A game faster than most people because they depend on consistency. So talk with your friends, talk with your support network. And if you don't have one, it's time to start building one. And sometimes that's trial and error, but you don't want to isolate yourself. You don't want to exist in a silo. You want to reach out so that you don't feel alone because you don't have to feel alone.
She's Dr. Wills. I'm Matty Wills. We might be cousins, to be honest. I'm not sure. But she's the Vice Chair for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Chief of Child Psychiatry at MetroHealth. And your last answer literally led us into this last question. And I told you was a busy lady. That phone is going off over there. Somebody needs you. We're going to let you get back to your day job in just 1 second. But the final question that we have for you is, what role does isolation and loneliness play in poor in your poor physique and just overall mental health in general?
Well, if you're in a part of an exercise program, say your primary care physician recommends it, or you just think it's a good idea, it's easier to have a partner to work in that. So you're not alone. You have someone else with a common interest, and that interest being one aspect or more aspects of your well-being. Also, when you're isolated, you start to get into your own head and the thoughts can be distorted, and that's not healthy because you may be seeing the glass as half empty, but everyone else around you can help you see by reviewing these things with them that the glass is 3/4 full, and it's much more full than it was a year ago. Right. But you don't want to get caught in that circle, that vicious cycle of thinking about negatively, and then nobody cares and nobody understands, etc. Because there are ways to work through that. All of us are resilient. We have various levels of resilience based on our past experiences, and through that resilience, we have refined and expanded our skill sets. So sometimes it just takes a little tweaking or a little guidance to move in the right direction, but we all have the capacity to do that. As one colleague says, he wears a t-shirt at every professional conference, never worry alone.
Very good advice and very good, very profound, very realistic answers from you. We appreciate you, again, taking time out of your day to talk with us about this. And, every time I have one of these conversations, especially with our friends over at Metro, I take a little nugget away. I got more than one little nugget out of this conversation. So I really appreciate your candidness and all of your responses. So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So that's another episode of Wellbeing Wednesday with Matty Wills, brought to you by MetroHealth. We'll be talking with another rep from Metro very soon. I'm Matty Wills. On behalf of Dr. Wills, we hope y'all have a good day. We'll see you soon.